Bon matin. Good morning. This has been a struggle for me the last 60 days. Mama passed away 2 months ago. And I'm struggling with it. But I got hope. I got hope. And my hope says someday, many things are going to happen. One of the things is he'll raise Mama up. He'll put black back in my hair. Things like that. I want to talk to you this morning about some gates. Growing up, we had gates. We would leave South Louisiana and come to Texas to visit my mama's people. And at that time, believe it or not, downtown Austin, Texas, people had chickens in their yard and a cow because you couldn't go to the store and buy milk. I remember when milk started coming, you'd have to set 2 empties out there in the front. Milkman come by and replace them. All he did was if you got 2 empties, you got 2 full ones. You had 3 empties, you get 3 full ones. And they didn't sell it at the store. But I remember being the youngest boy of 7 boys. And I begged Grandma, Grandma, can I go get the eggs this morning? She said, she never let me get the eggs. She says, because he only finds the cracked ones. And every time he goes, he finds them all that are cracked. I didn't understand what she meant. When you collect them, you gently put them down in there. You don't drop them in something. I miss her. I grew up in a family of many languages. But I remember Grandma saying, boy, you can go with them to collect the eggs, but don't touch the eggs. And what else are you going to do? I'm going to close the gate. When we were real young, our chickens ran free in South Louisiana. We didn't have a gate. In Texas, they had gates. So we kids had to learn that. You know, there are many gates in the Christian world. Talks about gates in here. You remember there was this couple, Adam and Eve. You remember them? You remember that God told them, you can live in this place called Eden, and you can eat off of all the trees, but there's one tree I don't want you to, what? There's 2 things you can't do to it. Couldn't touch it, and you couldn't pick fruit off of it, but you could go look at it. They touched it. They ate fruit off of it. And this book says that God escorted them out of the garden and put 2 angels with flaming swords at the what? Gate. The Garden of Eden had a gate. Grandma had a gate. You know, there are many gates in life. Matter of fact, when God led his people out of Egypt and wanted to bring them home, he went to the sea and parted it and gave them a gate. And what did he tell the leader to do? You do this, and I'll do this. Now, folks, listen to me carefully. We take this for granted sometimes, and we need to sit down on occasion and realize that what it speaks about is there's a reason. We think that he just parted the sea, they walked through it, and that was it. How long does it take 600,000 people and animals to walk through the Red Sea? How wide was the opening? Anybody know? Me neither. But you know, you stop and think. All those people walking, they couldn't sneak up on nobody. They made too much noise and kicked up a lot of dust, right? And they went through. God told the water, open up. Does water listen to God? He made a gate for them to go through. Folks, there's a gate waiting on you in the New Jerusalem. How many gates does the city have? 12. Well, I'll be. I'm going in the southern gate. And you want to know something? If you read your book, you need to read it about the New Jerusalem. You need to see the size of that city and why there are 12 gates. We take so much of this for granted. We think God had nothing to do, so he said, write, more write some more. He only said write when he wanted us to know something that was ultra important. There's no extra words put in here, just to fill in spaces. 12 gates. They walked through the Red Sea, they walked through this, and when they all got on the other side, the army that was after them, trying to take care of them, decided, well, maybe we can go through too, right? You remember what happened to them? They found out that water got a lot of wet in it that deep. What happened to them? God closed the gate. God opens gates for you and I for a reason. Grandma said, no. No. I don't matter how many times I asked her, she never said yes. I don't care how tall I got. For some reason, she didn't trust my hands on her eggs. Now, she would let me go hold the cow while somebody milked it. Can you imagine living downtown? I mean downtown, and having a cow in the backyard and chickens? That's against the law today. Folks, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Not most evil, no evil. For thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Listen, if you're having trouble sleeping, don't count sheep, go to the shepherd. He can work it out. Our God knows everything, and He wants you someday to do something for Him that nobody else in all of creation can do. Did you hear me? You go that way, that way, that way, that way, that way, that way, and space goes forever. And all along the way may be these balls of dirt, planets with people on them, but there ain't another one like this one. You see, you have been called to be a missionary, to tell the story of redemption in the first person to the other places. They've never tasted sin or pain. They haven't had to decide on certain gates whether to keep them closed, open, go through them, or walk away from them. Now, they're good people, don't get me wrong. We're the sinners. And God's going to send us to the gates of those cities. And when those people hear we're coming, they're going to say, yes, the redeemed are coming today. And Ellen White says that the people of this earth will never tire of telling their story of redemption in the first person. And all of them will never tire of hearing it forever. That has to be something. There are many gates to life. There's a word in English called sodomy, which comes from the word that was given to a city called Sodom. My Bible says it was Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities of the plain. Folks, the things that they're deciding to do today have already been decided to do long ago, and God said, and He sent a flood. This book tells the truth. And as a tiny little boy growing up, and I've told you this before, standing here before, Mama took us to church, but we never had a car. And we would walk out there to that highway, and Mama would tell all of us boys, leave the crawfish holes alone. Some of you don't know what that is, but they build crawfish holes and they're made out of something that when you kick them, you can't wash it off. But we love to kick them. And Mama would say she's going to tell Daddy, but she'd feel sorry for us later, but the girls would tell Daddy. Daddy, you know what they did? Daddy's favorite saying was, take your pants off. Your butt will heal, but them pants cost money. Gates. There's a lot of gates that we go through in life. People may invite you to something, to participate in something that you shouldn't be at. You're going to have to make a decision. You remember what happened to the one family that God said you need to leave Sodom and Gomorrah and let's go? You remember what happened? What happened to one of them as they left? They turned into salt. You mean pepper. Salt? Uh-oh. Salt. Now, why do you think, for a moment, adults, why do you think God didn't want them to look back? You know, when we leave places, we look back. Do we turn into salt? God had a reason, didn't He? What was the reason, do you think? There are no wrong answers. Let's discuss it for a minute.
He didn't want her to look back at sin.
All right. He didn't want her to look back at a place that was sinful as the most sinful cities on the earth. Over here.
I imagine when somebody quits being a drug dealer, they kind of could be tempted to miss the money they were spending.
Okay. Now listen. God says if I call you out of something, it's not worth going back to. Don't even look at it. I remember when the Arkansas, Louisiana conference called me one day. I was pastoring in South Louisiana. And the conference president said, John, I have a question for you. And I thought, yeah, I gave him this answer before he asked the question. Yeah, I want to be paid. What's the deal? He said, well, we want you to come to the office. I thought, uh-oh. I just asked him. I said, what did I do? He said, well, what you did was you've been working with them kids in South Louisiana, and the words got up to us that they got all kind of activities, and you've been doing camp and stuff down there, and we'd like for you to come up to the office and run the camp at Yorktown Bay. I said, what? I said, that's in Arkansas.
Way up north.
Yeah. He said, come up and talk to us about it. And I did and took the job and stayed there 9 years. But you know, I'm old-fashioned in a way. I'd hire these people from all over the place to work for me as counselors and run the boats and the horses and do this and cook and all this stuff, you know. And then one day they didn't know I was listening because I was eating. And somebody over here they began to tone it down a little bit. And I thought, what happened was I found out that after I did the last check and everybody was bedded down and I'd made all the rounds and make sure everything was okay, and then I'd head up to my place and go to bed. 30 minutes later, 3 or 4 of them would get in their cars and leave and go to Hot Springs around 1 or 2 in the morning. I wondered why some of them were so slow in the mornings. Well, once I found out, I was talking to my wife about it, and I said, well, I'm gonna work it out. I'm gonna close the gate. She said, what do you mean you're gonna close? She said, there's no gate up there. I said, there will be come tomorrow. So I went up there and worked and put a gate there. They had 2 poles, but I worked it out where they had the cross pieces, true gate. But I also went up there and I did something else that nobody could figure out. And I learned all these lessons the hard way. That's why my daddy used to tell me, Swagman's, now that's a grocery store. They didn't have Walmart back then. Swagman's got a sale on whoopings, and I'm going to go buy some for you boys. How many of you want? Then he'd buy hugs for the girls. Wasn't fair. But you know what I did? I got the backhoe and I went up there, and as the road went up the hill, you know, if you've ever been at Yorktown Bay, it's twisty, and as you come right as you go out, I put a gate and I dug out the ditches where it's only wide enough for a car and a half. And I figured I was going to get them. So I did all of that and worked it out. But sometimes young people don't do a bunch of this. Now, I meant the teenagers. Here's what I did. I walked up there and closed that gate without telling nobody and locked it. And I made my rounds at 12:30. I said, well, I'm going to bed. I'm tired. Y'all have a good night. And, you know, I went around all the cabins and prayed with them, one thing and another. Next morning, I get up. Everybody's in the chow hall talking. I'm going to the gate. The gate. And I'm hearing the word gate. I thought, well, what happened? What y'all talking about? What happened was 3 cars had gone up there to go into town, run around town, and then when they got up to the gate, there's no way to turn around to get down. And there's 3 cars in line. And I said, what's the problem? Oh, gate. And I said, huh? So I found out who they were, and I called them in the office. I said, all I want to know is the truth. They told me the truth as best they could. And I said, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to leave the gate open from now on. You are? I said, yeah. But if you go through it after 10:30 at night, don't come back in. And they said, okay. Last year, now I left the camp in 2008. Last year, I get a call from a guy. Pastor John, that you? Yeah. I said, who is this? And I hope I don't say his name. He's the son of a pastor in this conference. He said, I need to tell you the truth. I went in and out of that place many times too. But I backed my car down. He says, I almost tore it up, but I got it down. But he says, it's been bothering me. Can you forgive me? I said, oh, yeah. No problem. He said, no, I need to hear you. Do you forgive me? I said, yes, I forgive you. Who touched the gate of his heart to call me? Was it necessary that he call me? No, but maybe it was necessary that I hear. People are still, after the fact, deciding, you're right, Lord. My dad used to say it all the time too, because we were raised with horses and cows and stuff. We had all that stuff, and he'd send us out here to do stuff. But again, because I'm the youngest boy, my father died when I was 33, and he never called me by my name. Never. Even when he was laying in the bed dying, he called us all in one at a time. Then I heard him say, where's that boy? I'm 33 years old. Where's that boy? In other words, I'm the youngest of the boys. He never called me by my name. I was the boy. Everybody had a job. What I did was I had to work with everybody. They needed me to run for this and run for that. And where's that boy? Finally, I heard him say, where's that boy? And then I had to go in and square up with him. He squared up with me on his deathbed. He'd say, boy, listen. Are we okay? said, yeah. Do you have anything to ask me? I said, yeah, I do. I said, I remember you telling the pastor one day that if he'd open the gate, you'd come into church. And what did you mean by that? He said, well, boy, they got a gate at the church. I know, but it was always open early on Sabbath mornings and Wednesday. Why would you ask him that? He said, it's never open on Friday. And I wanted to be baptized. I said, yeah, I remember. He said, I asked him to open the gate on Friday and asked him if he would baptize me. And he did. I said, yeah, why did you pick Friday? He said, because Sabbath starts at sundown. I wanted to be first. You never know how to judge each other when it comes to the goings and comings through these gates of life. What we got to do is be willing to love each other and not have all the facts. He's got all the facts and he still loves us. Why do we need more than him? Do you remember there was a man named Noah? He was from South Louisiana. You remember him? Well, you remember those three guys that went in the fiery furnace? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? The Lord has his people everywhere. This guy named Noah had 3 boys, right? And they each had a what? Wife. And of course Noah had one. Now, how long did it take Noah to build that boat? Long time, didn't he? Whew. He had poor help. Yeah, he had hard work. He didn't have a hardware store to go to. Anyway, he built this ark, and God told him, you preach and work. Preach and work. And he did all of that. Now listen. The ark had a gate. Some people call it a door. Who closed it? God told Noah, you build it, you do this, you do that, and I'll do my part. And Noah said, yes, sir. They got done. The animals came in. And my book says that God closed the gate and sealed it. And nobody could open it. Why would God take time to talk about a gate unless it was important? Why would God tell you and I through his word that 2 angels were put at the gate of the Garden of Eden unless it was important? Why would God put 12 gates at the New Jerusalem unless he's made us vastly different from each other, but yet just as important to him? See that thing? And this thing here? I've heard music come out of them, but I have no idea where the on button is. I can't play nothing. I believe, because music came from heaven, it's not an invention of here, that music is a gate to your heart where God can speak to you in such a melodious way that it's different from just words. So important. Who was the head of the choir? Mm-hmm. Does he know how important music is? If they twisted it today, oh my. I remember when my father told us, he said, boys, we're going to go run the traps today, and here's the deal. Joseph, boy, y'all take the pirogue, and I want you to run the trout lines. Comprend? There we. Then he started naming the other one. Here's what you do, and you do, and you do. And now we all took out into the swamp. The hardest whipping I ever got, I got that day. Some people wouldn't call it a whipping, they'd call it a beating. And he did make me take my pants off. Because a snake got in the boat, and Joseph killed the snake by shooting it. A wooden bottom boat with a double barrel 410. The snake no longer lives, neither does the boat. But my daddy put it on us. I tried to listen to Daddy, but sometimes I went my own way. And he told me the snake won't bite you. Well, I was in the front of the boat, and when it moved to the back, I said, yes. Bite him. And when it got back too close to Joseph, he had a double barrel 410 pistol. It got at his feet, and that was it. Boom, boom. One of my brothers in the other pirogue says, oh, Lord, y'all going to get it now. I said, there's a snake in here. He says, you wish that snake was back when Daddy gets here. There are gates to life. 12 spies. You remember when the children of Israel would come out, they got through here, and they wandered all over the place? It took them 40 years to go about 250 miles. Didn't they have a compass? They were missing something. What was they missing? They were missing this. They didn't have it tuned in right. Finally, God said, pick one man from each tribe, send them down into the promised land, get an overview of what's going on and what's what, come back and give a report, and then I'm going to tell you how to go in and take it. Now, what happened? 12 men went in and came back. Who remembers what the reports were? 10 of them came back and said, what? All right, there were giants down there, right. And 10 of them saw all of this, and they said this. They watched it, manna rain down from heaven. They watched a pillar of smoke. They watched a pillar of fire. They watched a man touch a rock and enough water to come out to water 1 million living beings. But yet they couldn't take the cities. Duh. You know what duh means? That's short for dumb. Folks, God has called us to victory. He's not called us to defeat. And no matter what the odds are, when He says go through the gate, we just say, yes, sir, put the smile on and get after it. Can you believe for 40 years they watched all of this happen and then had to come back and tell the leader, I don't think we can do it? Where have they been? Who held the walls of water up? Who rained the food down in twice as amount on Friday? Who? There are 12 tribes to Israel, and all of us belong to one of those tribes. You belong to one of those tribes. My book says that each gate has a name of a tribe on it, and you belong to one of those tribes. The house of God, you call them churches, on earth are gates to the kingdom. Mama used to tell everybody in our community when we would start walking out to the highway waiting on a bus driver who was a South Louisiana bus driver. The schedules were printed in English, so he had no clue. And we would wait and ride for 90 minutes to 2 hours trying to get to church because we didn't have a car. Folks, listen. God's called us to victory. All he wants us to do is open the gate of our heart and let him come in for a little while. These little people, little folks, are watching us react to whatever's going on, and they're making decisions about him by the way we walk through life. My daddy used to say, whenever we had trouble, baby, you get the little people and I'll get the rest of them. And whatever happened, whatever come in the yard, alligator, whatever. I married a woman from Texas. She had never seen an alligator before. We moved down there and had some kids, and first place we bought, the first week we was there, two of the girls run in and said, oh, one of them fainted. I said, what in the world? And the other one said, Daddy, an alligator. And I told you this before. I went outside, and there's my oldest son on a tricycle. He's a preschool boy. He's about 3, 4. Riding around the alligator, huge alligator with a stick in his hand. Daddy, look, Daddy. I said, I'm thinking, my wife said, yeah. She's screaming, yelling, threatening everybody, wanting me to go out there and stab the alligator. I said, look, he's 12 foot long. I said, I'm going to handle this. You go cook something. She said, I'm going to cook you if you don't get it. So I said, I told John, something come to my mind. I said, John, you want to ride that alligator? And everybody else hollered, what? He said, yeah, Daddy. I said, well, look, you gotta have your hat on to ride an alligator. Come in and get your hat. Hurry. Run. He jumped off that bike and ran inside. I said, well, you whip him. I'm going to kill the alligator. I took Joel fishing in Bayou Gauche. And we were fishing, trying to catch some sockeye, or white perch, yeah. Anyway, she said, why all these logs in here? I said, thought to myself, I ain't going to tell her. There were alligators everywhere. But, and they were just moving slow, and she hadn't seen them. This is before the boy thing. Finally, I told her. She run to the car and ain't been fishing with me since. Folks, listen, there are many gates to life. Let me close. A man come to my house last week. Knocked on my door and said, can you come outside? I said, well, Stephen, come on in. He said, no, let's go outside. I thought, okay. I thought, well, I ain't had no words with him, but I'm going to be ready just in case. So we go outside, and we're sitting down on my wife's table out there. And he says, listen. I said, I am. He says, is there any way I can give my heart to Jesus? Yeah. Sure. I said, we've studied before, and you've been in and out of church with us, and one thing and another. I said, what's the deal? He said, I want to give my heart to Jesus. I said, okay. He said, if we go to the lake, will you baptize me? I said, sure. And then just about then, his wife gets out the car and walks over to me. She said, well, we want you to come over to the house and talk with us a little bit. We want to rededicate our lives to the Lord. And I said, okay. I said, let me ask you a little question here. What made you make this decision so suddenly? She said, it wasn't suddenly. She said, you remember 5 or 6 months ago you come over to the house and you brought some school kids to clean our yard? I said, yeah. She said, you told me that if we ever want to walk through the gate into the kingdom of heaven, to call you and you would baptize us no matter where we wanted. I said, okay. I'd forgot about that. Folks, listen. God's coming soon. Baptism is a gate. It's a public announcement I belong to Him. I said, we can have the baptism. You want to do it in church or out at the lake or in the bayou? And she said, wherever. Let's just go to the lake. We got some people we want to witness this. And we'd like to have a picnic out there and let you explain what the church is about. Then we'll have the baptism. Maybe some of our friends will make this decision. Folks, listen. I'm doing things and learning to do things that's different from ever before. They didn't teach me this at the seminary. Mama died at the end of May. I miss her. I miss her. Mama never gave up on any of us, no matter what we said or did. Mama went to church, I don't care if it was rain or shine, and without a car. Can you imagine standing on the highway with 7 or 8 or 9 kids? Ended up with 11 kids, but can you imagine standing up there waiting on a bus to come by? She'd get on that bus every once in a while, and I remember this, so help me God. I remember asking her about it on my birthday this year. I said, Mama, how'd you work that out with the bus drivers? She'd say, work what out? She'd say, sometimes we'd all get in, and you'd make us all sit here, and you'd stand up there and talk with him. And what was the deal there? I was suspected something, and it was true. There was times she didn't have enough money to get us all paid on the bus. And she would tell him, because she did it so often, he knew we were going to church. There's only 2 drivers that ran that place, and we knew them. On occasion, she would say, if you let us ride, I promise you, next time we have money, I'll give you enough for all of us and extra. Do you think you could do that today? She did it. And I remember on occasion she'd pay him, and she'd say, oh, by the way, there was a time or two when I owed you this and I owed you this. It was only 78 miles, but it took a couple of hours. We never got to church on time. Never. And when we would walk into church, you know you can't come into a church 7 or 8 kids and not be quiet. But I remember Mr. Couvillon would always say, you late again? And she'd just pass him by. Folks, listen. God's coming, and one of the gates in the New Jerusalem has your name on it. Right? This is the first gate you got to deal with before you can deal with one of them. Go home collectively as a family and individually as a family member. Open the gate and tell the Lord, I want you to reside here. And He will.